Hey, this is Black Woman 7 here, and today we'll be going over two brand new Pokemon introduced in the Crown Tundra DLC in the form of Spectrier and Glastrier. So these are two um originally we thought that or people theorized about these horses being in the game since they were like little files and references to like a horse and even like spaces in the Pokedex saying like, oh, there's two spaces after like Calyrex or around Calyrex. So, and even it mentioned that like it had something to do with the the deer rabbit Calyrex. So, but what we didn't expect is that these Pokemon are actually good in terms of like BST and like I guess you could say move pools, and they're very solid Pokemon in general. So we'll just get into why in a bit. So these two in the form of Spectrier and Glastrier are very interesting Pokemon in a way because we haven't had a ghost and an well, I guess we've had like ice types legendaries, but like we haven't had a ghost type legendary other than Lunala and Giratina like O. And then we've had some solid ghost types here and there, but we haven't had like a ghost type in general, like a solid ghost type with like a very good BST distribution. So and same with the last year. Of course, we have some strong like legendary ice types. Well, I guess you could say Articuno, but like one to come to mind is Kirim. But best year, you'll see it has some unique like properties about this guy. So we'll just start off with the Ghost Horse. I think I'm just gonna call it by Ghost Horse and Ice Horse because I just don't know like how to pronounce their names until like a little while. So if you forgive me for saying like Ice Horse or Ghost Horse for a while, so for the rest of the video, then yeah. So for Spectrier or Ghost Horse, it has base 100 HP stat, 65 in attack, 65 or 60 in defense, 145 in special attack, 80 in speed up, and 130 in speed. So you would think that this is a very strong special attacker, and you'd be correct. The problem is, while it has a very strong move pool and even good reliable bulk, it doesn't have that good of a special options because all you have aside Shadow Ball and maybe Specs, or not Specs, but maybe like Hex, and that's it. Like you have Mudshot, you have Hyper Beam, Snarl. Yeah, this thing's move pool is kind of atrocious. However, one thing that does make up for it is its ability, Grimne, which is essentially what many people have been asking for, which is Special Moxie. Even though Beast Boost is arguably better, it's like probably the best form of like stat boosting when OHKOing a Pokemon. So, but yeah, this is still like good for like a Pokemon like a Spectre with a high special attack stat, because with that high, because here's the thing, you have a move like, okay, let's just talk about Shadow Ball and Hex for a bit. So, Shadow Ball has a 20% chance to stop your opponent's special defense. So that's pretty massive because say something, let's say a Corviknight or Toxapex would want to switch in to a Spectrier, and you get the Spadef drop, that means like they can't switch in again, or they have to switch out, or very likely, worst case scenario is they get sacked. So that's why this thing could be dangerous at times. And with Hex, this is sort of a move that like essentially it benefits from like status options, Toxic Wisp, burns, or yeah, obviously Toxic Wisp, burns, sleep, poisons, you name it. So phrases, I guess you could say that. So yeah, basically like Spectre, like if you could get like status on the star on like the opposing side, you could just spam this move pretty like neatly, and you have a base 160, not 60, 130 like ghost move instead of 65, and that could just snowball pretty quickly with especially when you have Gribnay 145 speed, or 145 at special attack and speed. So like one thing to note is that its speed is really solid, 130. Of course they're faster Pokemon. Of course Dragapult stands up, and you have like the return of Tapu Koko, Zeraora, but those Pokemon don't want to switch into you at all. This thing is just amazing in terms of its in terms of the offensive pressure. So Move pool wise, again, its special move pool like just sucks. And I guess we could look at physical, but I guess you could go for body slams or paras and whatnot. But you do have access to foul play, so that could be a good option in here if you want to like hit like a, let's say like a physical attacker. It gives it something. So you also have access to status options like agility. Well, we'll get to that. Like disable haze. You have rest talk, taunt, wisp, and that's about it. But of course, the ones that stand out are taunt, wisp, haze, and disable. So those options allow like Spectre to have a good support coverage for like what a typical ghost type can have. So on top of that, it has a great setup potential with agility, boost its already amazing speed to like gunning levels, as well as nasty plot, because that's where you really start to snowball with this with the ghost horse really. And you also have access to calm mind, so if you can set up several calm minds, and you could just muscle past the team with this horsepower. By the way, let me see. This thing gets high horsepower. Wow, doesn't get high horsepower. That's sad. So yeah, let's just talk about the ghosts in a bit. So obviously the main sets are like that you will be thinking about using Spectrier is Specs with Shadow Ball, Dark Pulse, Mudshot, and Hex. Now Shadow Ball is probably going to be your main ghost move of choice because you have a solid chance to drop the opponent's special defense stat with the Specs boost and possible Grimney special Moxie boost. You could potentially just break opposing teams down pretty easily. You also have access to Dark Pulse, just as in case you need to like, I guess, well, Dark and Ghost types, Dark and Ghost does conflict with each other, so you could, I do think like Dark Pulse could be removed if you want for something, let's say like Wisp or even Foul Play. But yeah, I don't know, like Spectrier is like really one of those Pokemon that its move pool is very limited, so it's that option's like whatever you choose. I do think that you need to have Mudshot because it at least allows it to hit T-Tar. Because let's be honest, T-Tar literally walls this. I guess you could also like yeah, I think I guess one thing about like Mudshot is that it hits like those electric types, like let's say like Coco or Regieleki. So, and last but not least, you have Hex, which is a very strong option against Pokemon that are status. So if you're able to status an entire team, then you could just spam Hex, Choice Specs Hex, and that could just be an insane win con. So yeah, this thing is just a good breaker slash like cleaner. And I do expect this thing to see some use in terms of like the Choice Spec set. Another set that we've seen is Choice Scarf with Shadow Ball, Dark Pulse, Hex, and I guess a Will-O-Wisp. I guess the last option is whatever you think, whether it's like Foul Play, whether it's well, its coverage is kind of mediocre, but like I do wish this thing had like Trick, similar to Gengar. Then I think this thing's like opens up its doors, like in terms of sets potential immensely. So, but yeah, this is a good revenge killer. 130 speed on top of Specs is amazing. And you have Grimney just to boost up as is, so this could be a good revenge killer, as well as the fact that you're immune to like some of the best priority in the form of like E-Speed. However, you are weak to Circle Punch and Shadow Sneak, so keep that in mind. So another potent set I can see with this guy is Nasty Plot, Life Orb. Now this is just going for like for boosts and going for broke. However, I do think that this is like essentially like I don't think this is like I think this is probably its weakest set, but it's definitely an option. Like because if you have the Nasty Plot on top of the Life Orb boost, and if your opponent doesn't have any priority, especially Ghost Edge or Sucker Punch, like you basically just win right there, or just break an opposing team down. So I did list it as an option because I mean Nasty Plot plus Life Orb on this Ghost Horse just looks nasty, and this is sort of like similar to like what Gengar would do. So, once like a couple sets here, or the last two sets I have are Subcom Mine and Sub Nasty Plot. So let's just talk about Subcom Mine. So Subcom Mine is essentially a way to break opposing teams down with a combination of Will-O-Wisp plus Shadow Ball or Hex in this case. Forgot to indicate that here, but you could also run Calm Mind or Nasty Plot. The choice is yours. And of course, you're gonna run Leftovers or Boots on this guy. I guess you could say you could run Leftovers. Boots is there in case you don't want to get chipped down by hazards or T-spikes. But yeah, speaking of T-spikes, if you're gonna run like a setup set like this, run T-spikes. It works very well. So with this guy, another move you could put is Dark Pulse. And I know what you're thinking, like why run Dark Pulse on a Pokemon that's like limited in coverage? Of course, you get walled by with just a ghost typing alone, you get walled by a normal type Pokemon. But with Dark Pulse plus Nasty Plot, this allows you to basically muscle past the normal types. Unfortunately, you can't deal with the opposing Dark type Pokemon, but I guess but then again, you're probably gonna have to draft like a good or like use a strong like fighting type in general. So with this guy, so. And then we have Sub Nasty Plot. Well, I guess I already talked about it. Like I said, like Sub Nasty Plot is a very potent set. I can see just being able to muscle past stuff like Chansey or Blissey, especially with the flinch potential, is like kind of hilarious. But and especially with those bonds, like they probably they won't be able to like toxic you back, and the fact that S-Toss is you're a ghost type, so S-Toss doesn't do anything. So the only thing I would say is that be careful about infiltrator mons like Dragapult that could just bypass your sub and just go for, let's say, Dragon Darts or like what was it, the other move, like Phantom Force. So be careful on that end. So in terms of other options, you have Agility, which is kind of interesting. So you're gonna boost up your speed. Disable is kind of cool if you're running Protect or Sub, because you could just disable the opponent's like move for several turns, and you could allow you to set up. Then you have Foul Play. Again, that's an option in case you want to hit like physical attackers. And then last but not least, I do think Taunt is probably a good option to run on Spectrier. With Taunt, you're basically able to like semi-stall break the opposing team, and you could just prevent them from recovering or setting up. So now let's talk about the next and final Pokemon for today, and that is Glastrier. So Glastrier is kind of an interesting Pokemon because you might think with the Ice typing and the low speed stat, it's kind of, you might think this thing is like kind of like bad and it might fall into like Articuno type levels of bad and for like legendary Pokemon. But as you see, the stat distribution or BST for the rest is kind of amazing. Base 100 like HP, 145 attack, 130 defense, 65 special attack, which doesn't really matter. 100 like Spadef, and 30 speed. So obviously this thing kind of screams Trick Room if you ask me. So if you have access to a Trick Room team, or if you're using a Trick Room team, especially in VGC, I highly encourage you to use this guy. And even in singles, I do think this thing is bulky enough to be a good wall, as you'll see. Like 100 and 130 and 110 isn't terrible bulk. And if it wasn't for the introduction of heavy duty boots in the Generation 8, this thing would probably be taking like hazard damage, which is kind of bad. So yeah. But the thing about this guy is that its move pool is pretty good, if you think about it, because just look at its move pool. You have access to some of the strongest coverage in the game, like close combat, heavy slam for the fairies, high horsepower for ground types, and it could also bypass the grassy terrain from Rillaboom or Bulu. You have access to Icicle Crash, Body Slam for paralysis support, Body Press with its high speed like defense stats, amazing. You have Dark coverage, which Crunch, Dark Throat Chop, Dark Lash Out. You also have we also have access to Avalanche, which can be useful if you're since you're a slow Pokemon. So and if it also depends on if your opponent attacks you. So you get like 120 full power ice move, which is like insane. So the catch is you're gonna be forced to, like, does have negative priority, but you're slow as is, so you might as well take the chance of using it. So you also have access to Icicle Spear as well for a multi-hit like ice move, and yeah, that's about all the physical coverage you get on this guy. For I guess special, it does have access to Ice Beam and Icy Wind, so that's special. At least it has Ice Beam. So, and lastly, for status options, it has access to Iron Defense, so you could use like Bulk Up, sets pretty well. You have Rest Talk as well, so that could be good on like defensive Glacier sets, akin to Avalok. And you also have access to Sword Stance as well, so on top of your already high attack stat. And oh yeah, I almost forgot. You have Chilling Neigh, which is basically physical Moxie. It's basically like a Moxie clone. So this thing on top of 145 attack is just amazing. The only thing I don't like is that they didn't give this thing Eye Shard. That would have been amazing. So, but yeah, with SD and Iron Defense, you have two options to set up. You have two options to raise your attack or your defense, and on top of that, you do have access to other good coverage. Let me see. Go back to the status. You also have access to like pretty good status moves in general. So, I mean, you don't have access to Toxic, but you have access to Taunt. You have Endure if you want to take another hit. So yeah. In terms of like moveset and potential, like you could already see where this guy is going. Like obviously you're gonna have to use the boots here. Like because like boots last year is essentially like it's basically essential. With Icicle Crash, close combat, like high horsepower and the floor stance here. So this thing is basically like a good breaker if you ask me. Like it could be a good setup like sweeper slash breaker. You have access to Icicle Crash. You could go with Avalanche or Icicle Spear depending on whether or not you want whatever ice coverage of choice. You have access to high horsepower because Ice Ground is just amazing in terms together. And on top of that, you have access to close combat to hit opposing Glastriers or whatnot. So, with the heavy duty boots, you won't be taking any status damage or any like hazard damage, especially from spikes, rocks, T-spikes. I guess webs, but then again, you kind of don't give a damn about webs with this guy, so yeah. So let's just get on to the next set. Choice Band is on this guy. It looks pretty dumb if you ask me, because imagine if you're in the trick room and you take advantage of this giant band with the band set, like, or like just in general, like this guy can like just work as a wall breaker, just break down opposing like wands with like the combination of Icicle Spear, Icicle or Crash, Avalanche. Then you have access to moves like Close Combat, Crunch, High Horsepower, like CC. Even has access. Well, there's not really much else you could talk about with this guy because you have all the coverage you need, with, like the ice coverage between Avalanche, Icicle Crash, or Icicle Spear, and then you have high horsepower, so that's good coverage, and close combat and heavy slam, just rounded out. So, and then you have the leftovers body press set, which is kind of interesting. I made this more SPDF, and also by the way, the speed allows you to outpace like Toxapex, so keep that in mind. So anyways, back to the set. Body press plus iron defense is always a good option to try on any Pokemon with high defense stats, and especially if they could be worked on as a defensive mod. So this guy can have like leftovers or boots, and you could just use this to like as a win condition even. So of course you're gonna have to remove like the hazards, or you're gonna provide hazard support, but this can be a solid Wacon. So then you have access to the AV Horse. Now this one I do recommend you have like hazard control and some form of like hazard control and some form of wish support. for this guy to work. But this is a this thing just tanks almost every special move in the game, um, which is hilarious. Well, like, not like stuff like Kyogre, but like at least it has the potential to tank those hits and retaliate back. So I do think this set works very well on like will possibly work well in like VGC more so yeah, this is like very good like special pivot like against most like stuff. So then you have access to the rest talk set with boots, and this is essentially just taking advantage of like of this guy's natural bulk and high attack stat, and just like being able to stick around and just do damage throughout the whole battle. Of course you could remove like rest or not rest, but like sleep talk for like sword stance, which can be pretty good. So if you're using this as like a late game cleaner or like late game win condition. So then in terms of other options, you do have access to taunt, scary face, and bulldoze. I mean, these are ways of just to like slow down the opposing side. And I guess I already talked about avalanche because if this thing is, I think generally speaking, like honestly, people should just run like Icicle Crash, Icicle Spear over Avalanche, because you may never know when your opponent's going to attack you directly. And this move depends on whether or not you're going to get damaged. So I guess Icicle Crash is like better in that sense. And one last thing I'll say is that you could run like Fast Horse just so with T-Wave support, so that like if you're able to like, I have to see, let me see the speed on this guy. You're gonna have to be jolly nature to do this, but like certain like base 110s, like if you could like T-Wave certain mons and then like and just have them paralyzed, this guy can just go in against those type of Pokemon and just just attempt to like kill or just sweep from there. So but I do feel like this is gonna be like this a very slow but steady like horse, if you ask me. Like it's a very good Pokemon in terms of like breaking power, breaking potential. You have access to a move that essentially like, gives you a +1 like a physical like attack, and on top of that you have very high like very usable like move pool, unlike Spectrier. This thing does have a good move pool in general, and I do think that this is a bond that shouldn't be slept on in general. Like yes, it has a terrible typing with ice. It's weak to, I don't know, plethora of typings like fire, fighting, steel. Firefighting, steel. What was it? The other ones. Well, those are the main typings that you have to worry about. I'm probably forgetting some of those, but I guess Pokemon that could Skull Burn you and just Wisp are really bad. So, except if you're running like Rest Talk. But yeah, that's all I have to say about this Ice Horse and the Ghost Horse. Like they're pretty good additions to the metagame, if you ask me, in terms of like a Crown Tundra. So like honestly, if I had to say which is the better of the two, it's probably the Ghost Horse. Just because even though its special move pool is very limiting, like it does have like the potential to just break opposing teams down with like just Shadow Ball. Because let's be honest, Shadow Ball with that chance to reduce the Pokemon SPDF, you're never safe against this guy unless you have a mon like Chansey. But even then, like if this thing is Nasty Plot or they remove your normal type, this thing could just go into you against your whole team. So, and then when you talk about the Ice Horse here, the Glacier, on the one hand, it does have like very high attack defense stats all across the board, and this does kind of remind me of Avalook, except it does have like better SPDF and it in general. But here's the thing about this guy: this thing has access to setup, and it has access to semi-reliable recovery with rest plus sleep talk. You're vulnerable to like potential taunt users, like say like faster taunt users, so you may want to just go and attack them in general, get as much chip damage in general as possible. Again, like this thing's coverage isn't something to be slept on, because like with ice, ground, fighting coverage, and as well as dark, ghost, well, no, not Dark and Ghost, but I guess um, I also forgot Horn Outrage, so that's pretty noticeable on my end. So yeah. So anyways, that's all I have to say. And yeah, um, basically speaking, I would say like that Spectrier is like the best one of the two, and Glastrier. I will say that Glastrier, if you're using in VGC, try Weakness Policy. It could be pretty good. Like so that's all I have to say. So anyways, hope you guys have a good day, and I'll catch you with another video. So see ya.